Well, good evening, everyone. This is the Finance Committee. Today is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. It is 6:40. I'd like to call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
stands
one nation, under God,
under
indivisible, with liberty and justice
justice
for all.
Under Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, this meeting is being recorded. On March 28th, 2025, Governor Healy signed into law a bill which extends the temporary provisions pertaining to open meeting law to June 30th, 2027. Specifically, this further extension allows public bodies to continue holding meetings remotely without a quorum of the public body physically present at a meeting location, and to provide adequate alternative access to remote meetings. The language does not make any substantive changes to the open meeting law other than extending the expiration of the temporary provisions regarding remote meetings from March 31st, 2025 to June 30th, 2027. All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm going to do a call of Finance Committee members that are present tonight. We have Hugh Morton, Al Lees, Cindy Brown, Nancy Stanton Cross, and myself, Karen Rouse. So absent right now is Gary Carrero, Duncan Law, Christopher Thatcher, and Zach LeBrew are not present. So we do have a quorum, so we can get started on our meeting tonight. Well, thanks everybody for coming, and so we got a quorum, so that's great. I would like to start off with the first item on our agenda is to start the process to talk about our annual town meeting warrant articles. And the first one we're going to talk about tonight is Article 17, which I believe it's still 17, which is the Community Preservation Committee. We're going to have a presentation, and we have Betty Slade and Deborah, I'm not sure her last name.
Tulfi.
Oh, thank you, is here from the CPC. So Betty, I'll turn it over to you. And you've said you've done this 15 years. You know what to do. Hi there, welcome. Thank you for coming.
So I want to say this is the last time I will be doing it. I'm resigning as of June. And as chair, I will stay on for a few months. I'd like to introduce Deborah Tulfi, who has been working with me as vice chair for quite a while. So you'll be seeing her. She is very smart, very articulate, and very dedicated. She is the clerk of the Historical Commission, so she's been a representative to the CPC, so she knows how it works. So that's our plans. So this year we have 6 projects divided into the normal categories of open space, which is open space with recreation, community housing, and historic preservation. The first is we haven't had for 2 or 3 years, we haven't had a conservation restriction request, but this year we have one for 311 Drift Road. It's 28 acres of land. It is a beautiful piece of land, ecologically speaking, and it has historic aspects to it. And we have been asked to share in the cost of that by the Westport Land Conservation Trust. The total amount will be 1.2 million, and they're asking us for 300,000. And we voted unanimously to recommend to town meeting that that they support this project. It will be open to the public. They will have grounds. They will also have some historic sites that they will announce. The restriction is what we purchase, and with CPA funding, the town. And the holder of the restriction will be the Conservation Commission. So that's the first project for 300,000. And it's coming from estimated fund revenues. The second project is a project with WYAA, the Westport Youth Athletic Association, which has been, is really an excellent organization that's done quite a bit, been in operation since 2002. And a couple of citizens said have been trying to a lot of people have been trying to use the courts at the middle and high school. But because of the safety considerations, the police recommended that people should not be on the campus doing things like that and other things. So they can only use it in the evening, and then it gets too late, etc. So they, there was a strong feeling that there's some way that they could develop public courts that everybody could use. So this group went to the WYAA, and WYAA is giving them land on the at the American Legion. They have their facility at the American Legion, American Legion Highway. Last night they spoke to the Board of Selectmen about it after I had talked. There are going to be 5 tennis courts, and the capacity will be 10 pickleball courts. So this is what they have suggested. They're working out, trying to say that one of them would be both, and then 2 of them would be just dedicated tennis, and 2 of them would be dedicated pickleball, because it seems like it's very distracting to have a lot of different lines on a tennis court. So this is what they have decided to do. It's going to cost them over $600,000, and they have asked the CPA to finance $400,000 of that. They have already started raising funds, and they will be willing to manage it. They're setting up a system, a software system, to be able to manage people coming in and out. And it will be a new age group of people coming to the WYA. Right now, it's mostly students, are young people who are using the softball and baseball fields. Oh, my husband turned on the TV. Okay. So I think that that's very good. And the WYA told us last night that they're going to have walking paths also. So that'll be good for older people. So that's the second project. The third is the Macomber Elementary School playground. It's over 25 years old. It doesn't have handicapped accessibility and all the various things that it needs. And so Michelle Raposa came to us, and she also went to CIPC. So the joint cost of that will be about $450,000, but she's asking for the town meeting to approve $300,500 from CPA funds. It will be a completely new elementary school. They're actually moving at the playground. They're actually moving it closer to the building. Again, it will be used after school hours, only after school hours and in the summer. But it will be open to the public, complete public. So those are the 3 open space recreation projects. Community housing, we have in Westport an affordable housing trust, as you all know, but maybe everybody else doesn't know, that are constantly trying to find ways to support affordable housing and to develop affordable housing. It's a very complicated thing to develop affordable housing. And so we actually needed the trust to have the capacity and to hire housing officers who could help them. So the way that it's been going for the last few years is that the housing office, which includes legal, a legal side of it, the it includes the housing officer who they hire from outside, an architect. They're asking for $40,000 for that. They also are asking for $60,000 for what they call prehab. And that's basically helping homeowners who have restrictions on their home and can't afford to do things that will preserve the house, like roofs, septic, well, not septic systems, they haven't asked for that, but that kind of thing. It isn't putting in refrigerators or things like that. It's actually to preserve the building itself. And they're asking for, as I said, $60,000 for that. And then we, for the last few years, have been supporting a fund, a trust. These trusts, the conservation can have a fund, affordable housing can have a fund like this, and we put money into the fund. It will not be expended for a particular project that we know about, but it will be available to the Affordable Housing Trust in case property comes up that they can buy. That's one thing. So they have a fund set aside for that. And also for pre-development and other kinds of costs, especially this year, we've said to them that you should be you're able to allocate some of these funds to looking for other properties. I think one of the ones that they seem interested in with the planning board is some kind of affordable housing at the old school. So that is, we're asking the town meeting to approve $300,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust. Historic preservation, there are two projects. The Bell School, as you know, it's now a history center. It's for all of Westport. It's been financed by private funds, a lot of private funding. CPA funding has been used throughout the process of restoring this and the building very excellently, and also making it into a history center. And we are requiring that in a historic preservation restriction be put on the external part of the building. That has already been developed, and the Historical Society and the Historical Commission, which will hold that, have come to an agreement on the terms of it. It is now with the state Massachusetts Historic Commission waiting for approval from them. When in the process of this restoration, they found that their clapboards had really deteriorated. And so they came to the Historical Commission about it, and they discussed, and the Historical Commission agreed that this should be a project that CPC should look at. So we looked at it and agreed that we would help them with that cost of restoring, or mainly it's replacing the clapboards for $49,000. So that's the Bell School. The American Legion Hall, we have, that is, as you know, it's town property, but it is managed by a private group, the American Legion. Through the years, we've given them various funding. And one of the ones that was out there was the question of how do you get access to the second floor? And there was a lot of discussion, should it be a lift or a ramp? And after really careful consideration, it was decided to do a ramp. And the cost of that is going to be $35,000. That's also been vetted by the Westport Historical Commission. CPC always asks the Historical Commission to look at projects before we accept them. So that's $35,000. It will be wood, made of wood. We have to use 10% of the estimated fund revenues for each category: open space, community housing, historic preservation. So we can either use it as taking money from estimated funds, or we have to put in the amount of money as reserves to build up their reserves for the next years. So this year we have used historic preservation reserves for historic preservation because people wanted to get this done quickly and they don't have to wait. The funds are available after town meeting. So we're putting in 110,000 so that we meet that 10% that's required each year. Administrative funds, we put in 40,000. We use that for clerks, for conservation restrictions, all the things that we have to deal with. We do appraisals, for example, for the CR. We will have our own appraisal, and that adds up in funding. So we put in 40,000, and if we don't use it, it goes back into the CPC funds. We don't lose it. So those are the projects for this year. And any questions?
No, I just want to weigh in that when it comes to the Historical Society, I'm going to recuse myself from the vote. But other than that, I don't have any questions.
Betty, just a quick question. Do you have many requests that you are not able to meet, or are you able to every request that's coming your way to be able to support in some way?
We do have requests we have not met. I've been able to meet. I've kept a list of them, about 8 or 9, and often we catch them right away. So that's one. They just don't fit in the category. Like if they want to pay for a sidewalk, it turns out we're not allowed to do that. Things that we're not allowed to do. In some cases, it's a matter of it's not quite clear. And so one of the issues has been churches. As you know, since 2018, the Supreme Court passed a ruling that people thought, oh my God, we're not going to be able to help churches. It turns out we can, but you have to do it right, and we asked town council and the Community Preservation Coalition for their advice on things like that. There's one right now that's coming before us. Deborah and I are going to go look at. The issue there is that this building hasn't really been open to the public. And we have to have, it's interesting, they have to be open at least one day a year to the public. But to do a project like that, it has to be a very important building. I mean, it has to be so important in the history of the town, or very old or something like that. But we found that when we bring that topic up, people say, well, we'll open to the public and we'll let them in and we'll do things. So they try to meet that. So there's been a couple of church projects that I've said no immediately because it was inside the sacristy. We can't do that. We can't do things inside the sacristy, but we can do windows if they don't have religious symbols on them. So a lot of towns do projects for churches. And remember last year we did one for Howland Hall, which of course passed muster in every way. It's completely independent.
Great. Thank you for that, Betty. Appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions for Betty?
Okay.
No.
We got a small crew, so we'll see less questions. And Hugh is on the CPC, so he doesn't have questions.
Hugh is an important to us, I can tell you.
I would say with Al, I would need to recuse myself at this level from taking a vote for other reasons.
Sure thing. Well, we're definitely not voting tonight, but when we get to there, we'll certainly honor honor that. Well, Betty, thank you so much. So this is your last year. You said 15 years you've been on CPC?
I've been on since 2008. So,
Wow.
but I've been chair in and out, as you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Or deputy or a co-chair or vice chair. But I want you to know that Deborah is a very special person. I'm just thrilled she's willing to do it. It means a lot to me. CPC has for years. We fought battles, as you know, to keep it.
yeah.
I've enjoyed working with the community. This community interaction, the town and community, where you do things people want done. You
Yeah,
know, I mean,
right.
you don't say you need to do this. They want to do things and they say, we'll step up and do it. And I found that really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your 20 plus years of it. So
Yep.
I'm sure the committee and the town will miss all your innate knowledge that you have. And I'm sure you'll still be offering guidance behind the
Yes.
scenes. So
Yes,
Yep,
for a while.
you'll be sorely missed.
very
Thank
much,
you, Al.
very much. And welcome, Deborah. We look forward to seeing you next year.
Thank you. And Betty has very big shoes to fill, so I hope she continues to provide the guidance to me because I'm going to need it.
You're a quick learner, Deborah.
Those are David's shoes, not hers.
All right. Well, thank you both.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it. All right. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
All right, so continuing on with our, I just want to note Duncan Law joined our meeting at 6:56 p.m. Hi, Duncan, you're here.
Yep.
Right?
Greeting.
All right, ratings. Okay, great. So the next warrant article we'll be discussing is Article 20, which is the appropriation for acquisition of foreclosed tax title properties. And we have Susan Brayton, our treasurer here, collector. Susan, you're here, right? I think I saw you somewhere.
I am.
Hi there. Maybe you can give us an update on this article.
Okay. The article is to acquire properties that go for foreclosure. The tax title law has changed considerably in the last 2 or 3 years. There was a lawsuit, Tyler versus Hennepin County in Minnesota, where the owner sued the town or the county for the excess equity in its property. And so years ago, what would happen is if a tax title property went for foreclosure, the town would foreclose, and if they sold it, they would keep all the proceeds from the sale. Now we're required to give the people the opportunity to acquire that excess equity, and if it doesn't, then it goes through another whole process. It doesn't mean that the town will ever end up with it. But in the meantime, if the town, I am actively pursuing several properties here in town through my tax title attorney and so forth. And if the town were to find a property that forecloses that they feel would be beneficial for town use, the town would need equity to purchase for the excess equity. And what happens is as soon as it's foreclosed, it's a very tight time frame that they allow in the law. It's 30 days. The selectmen have like 60 days from the time that the initial foreclosure is done. There's a 30-day appeal, and then the selectmen have to make a decision within 60 days. If they want to keep it, they have to have an appraisal done in the next 120 days. And upon receiving that appraisal, we calculate how much is excess equity. In other words, above the cost of the appraisal, all the back taxes, interest, legal fees, land court fees, and that amount has to be placed into a separate account at that time. so that the owner can claim that. And so having said that, we would always need access if we ever want to retain a foreclosed property. We would have to have access to funding
Mhm.
very quickly. We wouldn't have time to call a town meeting. So if we don't get the article passed, it just means that the property would have to sell on the open market. And then we would turn around and from the sale, they would be able to claim that excess equity. But for right now, that's where we're at. So I proposed an article that I modeled it after the ag open space articles that we had several years ago to see if we get just a general amount approved. And then as properties come available, if the town wants to keep them, we can borrow just the amount each time for the excess equity. We wouldn't necessarily need to go out and borrow a lump sum of money and let it sit there waiting for this. It would just be each one. The drawback is any money that we spend would have to also be voted at the polls for a debt exclusion, because if we don't, each time we borrow, it would be hitting directly against the budgets for the debt payment. Any questions?
Yes.
It's a lot.
No,
It's a
that's
lot.
okay. Did the select board last night determine to keep this article on the warrant, and did they recommend a dollar amount that would be?
They went with 5 million. They did vote to keep it on the warrant, and they said 5 million.
And
Which means if
go ahead.
we've
Sorry.
had a property that we needed to borrow $500,000, we could. If we had a property that we needed to borrow 2 million, we could.
And is it to be excluded debt or non-excluded debt? Has that been
That's
determined?
that's usually determined as part of the motion on town meeting
Okay.
floor. I would recommend that it should be, but that's entirely not my call.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to that. I think, there's some of the discussion, and at least from the board, was that it would move forward as excluded, if
Okay.
it was being proposed.
Great, thank you. Hugh, go ahead. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say that Sue has explained it very well. But the difference really is if the town forecloses and sells, the town gets whole in terms of things that should have been paid, and the excess that belonged to the person who couldn't pay is available. It's their money, they get it. If the town's going to keep it, in essence, the town is buying it from
Correct.
the original owner. So that then makes sense that the town would, out of its funds, pay the difference between the cost being recovered and the actual value of the property. It gets more cumbersome, as Sue explained, in escrows and appraisals and so forth and so on. But it is perfectly rational that the past Michigan case was where the county sells it, I think it was a $500 excess or so on taxes not paid, and $150,000 property. The town keeps the rest after the $150. That's obviously wrong, as the Supreme Court has said. So this is implementing those requirements, which are only sensible and rational.
Correct.
Thank you, Hugh. Cindy, go ahead.
So I guess I can see where I'm trying to put myself in the seat of a person sitting there at town meeting voting on this. And I can see where there would be question. I know one of the discussions last night at the select board meeting was that there would still be a public process, a public forum, if you will, if it were to be determined that the town wanted to retain this property. But it still takes that out of the hands of the voters. So it wouldn't necessarily go to a town vote that this particular parcel is of use to the town, and that the town, the voters want to consider that piece of property and go to debt for that. This kind of still leaves the town with an open checkbook for a piece of property that may have been foreclosed upon, all the steps that Susan just laid out, and that there's, say, we'll just say a $2 million gap there, because it's a value, you know, it's a nice piece of property somewhere, it's a very large piece of property, but it leaves it in the hands of the select board through a public meeting process. Perhaps they would want input from the public, but the final say would still be left with the select board. I can see people balking at that, saying, okay, it still should be in the hands of the voters whether or not we want that parcel of land and whether or not we want to pay extra dollars for that. So that's the only part that I think is a little bit of a wrinkle here, that people may not want to be willing, whether it's excluded debt or not, may not want to give up that ability, that they have carte blanche to be able to look at these parcels on their own without consulting the voting group. That's really my only comment to that.
Thanks, Cindy. Go ahead, Hugh.
may have missed something, but if it's excluded debt, I think that always requires a town vote or to exclude something from the operating budget. So if that's the case, and I'm not going to speak to the time restraints because that may or may not be practical, but if the town has to vote on
Well,
debt,
no, so
paying
she
interest.
wants the vote to be taken now because we need to move quickly once that property is taken. She only has 180 days to be able to make them whole. So she wants the excluded debt vote. I say, Susan, the process requires that notice be held in advance.
This is above my pay grade because it seems to me that I don't see how you can vote to exclude a debt that has not already been approved or on a warrant. It's something that may happen in the future.
Well,
So I
that's
don't
what she's
quite see how
looking
you can
for.
do that.
That's what she's
Matter
looking
of
for
law.
a dollar amount of $5 million to have the ability to issue excluded debt up to an amount of $5 million without any additional requirements. So there would be the town meeting vote, a ballot vote, and then it would be, chances are,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that would pass, but whether it's included debt or excluded debt, I think they're looking for a blanket amount up front.
Okay, I understand you, but I'm still not sure because
Okay,
if it is voting to exclude a debt that may be incurred, hadn't been incurred, I don't know whether that legally is permissible to do it in advance. But that's
Yeah,
a matter for town
I can-
council probably.
I can see your point.
So Susan, just to clarify, so the process under this scenario would be at town meeting, there would be a proposal to authorize the borrowing of excluded debt up to $5 million. And then within 90 days or some short period of time, it would have to also go to the ballot, right? To then approve the authorization of excluded debt. And so now so you'd have town meeting authorization, and assuming the ballot passes, then you have the ability, you don't need to take out any borrowing at any time until you would actually have a property. And for example, it might be $500,000 property. So you would incur debt only to the extent that you have a property, right? So you wouldn't go out and have a $5 million debt. So the taxpayer would only see the tax effect on borrowed dollars, not the 5 million, right? Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Right.
And as to the legality, can they approve that excluded debt? That's gonna be one for town council
Yeah.
to review. When it's not for a specific project, I uncertain on that. Like I say, this was modeled after the ag open space articles that we had done. And those were, I think we had done two of them. They were each like 2.5 mil. And each was utilized for smaller projects like this. There was a certain amount given for, say, the Santos Farm or for the Sherman Farm up on Blossom Road and different farms to purchase restrictions and so forth. That one, I believe, was not excluded. At the time, we weren't often excluding debt anyway. But right now, if we vote debt and it's non-excluded, it's definitely going to have an impact on our budgets.
Yeah, I'm not objecting to excluding, I'm just talking about mechanics, and it seems to me,
Chris Vitale has his hand raised. I don't know whether he has an answer for that or not.
Let's
let me
hear it.
just finish my thought, which was, usually this is not going to be something that happens as a surprise. You've got a parcel where the taxes haven't been paid for a considerable period of time. There's been discussion about how do we get it back, what do we do, so forth and so on. And the town, in my experience, has not been rapid in trying to foreclose on tax titles. I say that and not as criticism, but simply that it is not likely to be a surprise that this is going to happen. But there's time to prepare the selectmen, the voters, etc., as to what's going on. And so those time limits in the statute may be less of a problem because you get time to get a head start before the clock starts running. But Sue's absolutely right. This is town meeting, not town meeting, town council.
Yeah, I'll just jump in really quick. So, I think something that Sue mentioned, which is important to note, is that, really this has been triggered because the law on this has changed. And so every single community is in the exact same position we are with these conversations in terms of, how do we want to address this? And obviously give the town the opportunity, if there is a property, the ability to retain it. Now, I think, I'll refer to council on the language and what would need to be done. But again, every single town is kind of doing the exact same thing we are. But I guess what I would want to just note is that, the foreclosure process, I don't believe necessarily went through town meeting in the prior form, previously under the previous law. So I think the difference here is just, setting aside that funding in anticipation of, if there's an opportunity that comes up that the town can go and potentially acquire it. So,
Yeah, the issue is whether the town keeps it or not. And I know you know this, Chris, but I think it's worth pointing out this is not optional. The Supreme Court has said thou shalt remit the excess from whatever disposition to the original owners.
oh, no. I mean, we're in total agreement. I
We
think
have
the
to do
idea
it.
is that, the alternative is, if this isn't something that ends up getting approved at town meeting or at the ballot, is the town just doesn't have that opportunity. As part of the foreclosure process, there are, if the town were to sell the property, there's new guidelines on that piece of it too, in order to make the individuals whole, whether or not the town retains the property or not. So I totally agree with you, Hugh.
Let me
on that
just
piece
take
of
a
it.
comment, first comment. If you're going to sell it, it's easy. Then the money comes in and it gets split between the owner and the expenses the town has incurred. It's the retention. But there's another answer to that one. Instead of going to foreclosure, you buy it from the distressed owner and go through the usual process, through town council, town meeting, financing, borrowing, whatever the financing package is. So you just don't use the foreclosure procedure if the town has an
Unfor-
interest in acquiring it.
Unfortunately, with these properties, what most of the properties, I've had some success by submitting some of these out recently. I've had a few paid off, and one significant one very recently paid off on, and what the property owners, when they were notified that we were submitting them to land court for foreclosure, they opted to sell the property themselves.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen that way, unfortunately. People sometimes, for whatever reason, they just don't want to sell.
Mhm.
And I think they're just, whether they're in, why they don't, but they're not going to sell. It's got to go through the complete foreclosure process.
No,
And once it gets to that point, the whole thing is, at that point, we really can't present it to town meeting for purchase until it's foreclosed, because they have 30 days after the foreclosure to appeal it.
okay.
So we can't do it until then. And then after that 30-day appeal period, the selectmen have 30 days to make their final decision on whether they're keeping it or getting rid of it.
I'm
So
sure
you
you're
just-
right. I was only going to say, the stick of the foreclosure in the booming might encourage people to decide to sell even though they really didn't want to. But I'm sure you're right, the mechanics.
Right. It's been very effective, put it that way. I have a few that are I'm making very good headway with on payment plans, and like I say, I've had a few that have actually paid off. I have a few more that are being a little reluctant to do anything. That's why I'm presenting this.
Mhm.
Cindy, did you have your
Yes.
hand up?
I did. I mean, the question was sort of answered. I mean, I think that the $5 million amount is going to scare people off. That's all. I think that it's just people are going to be concerned that it's a very large dollar amount that they would have no control over. That we could be borrowing, and why does it have to be such a large dollar amount? And and I get it. I totally get it, because this is not just necessarily for one piece of property, but you could have a $500,000 piece one year, and you could have a $1.2 million piece the next year. This could be prime property next to a current cemetery, or one that could be used for a cemetery or some other public purpose. I get all of that. I'm just putting my hat on of the person sitting in the 8th row at town meeting. That's really where I'm coming from.
Well, one of the options too, and I don't know what the select board, it sounds like 5 million is maybe, but Susan, you had referenced, was it the land trust that they had done 1.5 million, and then similarly, but this was non-excluded debt, and then a few years later, another article came at 1.5 million.
Yes, they
the same.
did.
Could something like that be done where maybe it's
It
not?
certainly could. We certainly could amend that amount on town meeting floor to a lower amount if that's certainly doable. I mean, my goal is not to foreclose any property.
Mhm.
My goal is to collect the taxes. But it's very interesting, a few of the properties that are out there that the people just haven't paid, and they just aren't making, despite the fact that the treasurer's office over the years has sent them letters requesting they come in and set up payment plans. And even when my attorney starts sending letters, they still ignore everything. So, yeah, it's a very interesting process, and it takes a long time even to get through land court. It's a
Mhm.
there's one that's been in there for about almost 3 years now.
Didn't a few years ago, wasn't there a list that was published in the newspapers of all the tax properties of unpaid taxes?
I do have a list of all the unpaid properties in town. There's about 80 of them. About 50% of them are what they call land of low value, which does not go through this same process, thankfully. That's a different process that gets submitted through the state, but for foreclosure. But the rest of them are in varying stages. I do have, like I say, several people on payment plans. I have some that are very faithful about them, others that have not been quite so faithful. And I try to chase them down periodically and try
Have you
to.
ever thought about publishing that list again? Did that shake some people out of the tree?
Well, we publish every year when we do the tax takings. They're published in the newspaper, any of the new ones that are potentially coming up for tax taking. The list, I don't know as if the list itself is ever been published. It is, like I say, when we do the takings, those have to be published. But the list itself is public record. I do have people who periodically will request a copy of it. I think it's more people trying to send out letters to people saying, we'll buy your property type of thing. But yeah, it's public record who's on that list.
Right, I understand that it's public record, but there's nothing like a publication showing anybody who subscribes to any particular newsletter or journal, or whether it be Shorelines or the Herald News or whatever, a list of those people who are in arrears.
I would
Because-
say, I'd also say, how about the town website?
Right, put it right on the website. It is public record. Put it on the website. Let their neighbors see that they're not, that they're, you can draw a line, whether they're 60 days overdue or whether they're 6 years past due. I mean, I think that if it's been effective to get people to come in because they don't want to see their name in press, then maybe whatever it takes, it's cheaper than land court.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Now,
mean,
the tax title list is only people who are actually far enough behind to have the lien placed on their property. The people who are just a little bit delinquent, somebody who misses a payment, I'm certainly not, those people
Right.
are not.
And I'm
Yeah.
not condoning that, but if you have real tax title people, put it up on the website. What's wrong with that?
yeah, I mean, this town is sitting with very, very tight budgets, and any dollars that are due to the town from real estate taxes that aren't collected are just money that the town can't fund its budgets with. So it's money owed to the town. So, I'm in support of that. Nancy, go ahead.
I don't have a problem with the 5 million. Properties today and the value of properties are a lot different than it was years ago. What I find in my own business, that the trend, it used to be in our generation that you would be embarrassed not to pay a bill. That's not the same anymore. The embarrassment does not hit a lot of folks, and they know their way around the system, and they know not paying their taxes what a town or a city has to go through in order to effectuate a foreclosure from that municipality or the town's position. People understand what can happen in bankruptcy and how to work around that with credit cards. I see it every day. So we're not dealing with the same thing. I do think that the town of Westport, that people that are going to be in that town meeting, I would like to think, and I think they pay their taxes and they think everybody else should too. And so I think $5 million and being able to effectuate the process quicker, cleaner, and people knowing that, you might have more people paying rather than have a couple of these rascals not paying. But I don't think 5 million is we continually go shorthanded all the time in Westport, and then we want follow through, and then we back to having these discussions. But if you get a lot of flack from the floor about people thinking it's too much, then lower the number at that time to maybe, let's read like DEPCOM, maybe the number's 3 million. And that's an acceptable number, but I would go in at the 5. I don't think if you explain it to people that they're going to have a problem with the town taking that type of position in order to deal with people that aren't paying their property taxes. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Nancy. Hugh, go ahead.
Nancy makes a lot of sense, but I also to point out, this only arises if the town wants to keep the property.
Correct.
If the issue is simply getting it to be paid, the sale and dividing the proceeds doesn't raise any of these issues, and it's certainly an inducement to do something about it or see your property sold away. If the town wishes to acquire a property for, say, and it's worth 500, $1 million, seems to me that's going to be a pretty good discussion on its own merits before you get to it's a property that's being foreclosed and we have to go through this procedure if we're going to raise the money to do it. It's still going to cost money. It's a matter of whether it comes through loans now or some other way. But only if we're going to keep the property.
Thanks, Hugh. Susan, I would like to request a copy of the list send to the Finance Committee if it's public record.
Will do. I'll forward that to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And even if looking at the list and we haven't really talked about the dollars or, the number of properties in the dollar amount, but I think, as you get to town meeting, even if those that chose to keep the names anonymous, you could be saying there's 70 properties that total X dollars. So we have some sort of framework of how much are we talking that are, taxes that are due to the town. So I think that would be helpful to have that too.
Okay. Yep. The numbers, it's almost $1 million
Wow.
in taxes. Or about $1 million in taxes.
What could the town do with $1 million?
Mm.
Thanks, Susan. Anything else for Susan on that one? No. All right, great. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so continuing on with our discussion of warrant articles. So Chris, you are up for the rest of them.
I'm up. Okay.
So generally what we do, Chris, just to let Nancy, who's a new member, and to know. So we go through the warrant, which we have been reviewing and we've had copies of. And so the ones that have financial implications are the ones that the Finance Committee will ultimately need to make a recommendation on. So there are some that are non-financial, so they're less important for you to, we certainly, if anybody has any question on any of them, we certainly, this is a great opportunity to ask you that, but the ones that are of financial are the ones that we will make a recommendation on. And I think they're relatively obvious this year, which ones are financial and non-financial, but so we have the 4th draft of the warrant, right? That is we got a 5th draft that you just sent to us.
We got a 5th. Yes. So nothing, there was 2, very minor grammar corrections with the 5th draft.
Okay.
Nothing of substance. But I guess as I go and look through it with a fine-tooth comb and check and recheck, we'll update it. But I will also just make a note that this is still pending town council review. So some of the language, is very familiar or similar to what we've used in prior years. But there are some new articles that are being proposed for this year. So, with that, we do like to have council review that. So the substance won't change, but the language may, as we get some feedback from council. So I'll
Right.
I'll put an asterisk there. So what I'll do is I'll just go through them in order. And then obviously for the non-financial ones, I'll just ask at that point if there's any questions. And if not, we can just pass over if that
Do you
if that
want to
works for you.
present, or would you like me to present as you talk through?
If you're able to present, yeah, that'd be helpful. I have it up on my other laptop next to me,
Okay,
so
sure.
that'd be helpful. And just while that's being pulled up, so the select board during last night's meeting, they are planning on approving the warrant for posting at their April 6th meeting.
Perfect.
So hopefully that just provides the group enough time to review everything. And if for whatever reason I can't answer a question this evening, I'm happy to get that for you for next
Perfect.
week's meeting.
Yeah, so
Oh.
our just on that. So our plan is to get through as many as we can tonight. And then we also have next Tuesday to go through the rest of them. And then I'd like the committee to be ready at the end of next Tuesday to have all their information that they need in order to be able to, when we make the recommendations on March 24th, to have that. So we'll go through information this meeting and next meeting. And again, hopefully by the end of next meeting, we have everything, then we can sleep on it and we will make the recommendations on all the articles on the 24th. So that would also be the budget number to determine to review of the select board budget. If anybody has any recommended changes to that budget that would be different, that would become the finance committee budget. So, okay.
Great. All right. So I see it's up on the screen. So on the first page, it's in index. So 34 articles are being proposed at this point in time for the town meeting. So just starting on page
I
number
can't
2.
scroll.
Whoops.
For some reason, I cannot scroll.
It won't let you hit next page.
I am stuck and I cannot scroll. I'm going to unshare and try it again. For some reason, I have this little sticker is on and I can't get it off. Stop annotating.
Let me see if I can pull it up on mine really quick if you have any issues with
Sorry.
that.
Yeah. I cannot move. Do you want me to stop sharing, Chris?
Yeah, I was able to pull it up.
All right, great.
Let's try this. It's asking me about my permissions. Yes. Yes, you can record my screen. All right, there we go. Perfect. All right, technology. Let's see. All right. I think that should work. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Now we can.
All right, you can see
Yes.
the warrant. All right, perfect.
Yes.
We are in business. All right, so
Great.
as I mentioned before, and I can scroll. All right, good. We're in business. 34 articles. We'll just go down the line here. Again, if there's any questions as I go over the summaries, please feel free to stop me. So Article 1, this article votes to approve paying $890 for a prior bill. This is required of town meeting for anything after the fiscal year is concluded. So there is currently one outstanding invoice for $890.
Well,
Article 2.
Chris, what was that for? Do you know?
Unfortunately, I do not have that invoice in front of me. But
Okay.
I can send you just a recap. Yeah, of
I was
course.
just curious because I believe that's a florist. So I was curious why it was so much for a florist. Oh, Nicole
Nicole
just
is raising her
hand.
hands.
Okay.
Go
Thanks,
ahead,
Nicole.
Nicole.
It was for the veterans for flowers for, I want to say Memorial Day. But the bill came in later in the year and she didn't encumber it. So that's why it has to go to town meeting.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
So Article 2, line item transfers. Again, this article moves $70,500 within the current fiscal year budget to cover expenses, primarily through the transfer station for personnel and expense costs, as well as moving some funding from free cash into the reserve fund for unpaid leaves.
All right, I'm trying. I don't want to be a nudge about this, but what fund is that for unpaid leaves? What is that for?
Nicole, I don't know if you mind just speaking to these as well. Thanks.
Yeah. So what that is quite a few years ago, we started this fund. So what it is money goes in there every year through the budget for people who are retiring. So we're paying out their vacation time or sick time. It's their buyouts. We've had quite a few fire and police retire this year, including Jim and Denise as well in the selectman's office. So our fund is a little low. I think we usually put about 100,000 in it every year. So that's what it's for.
Great. And just to so this was a Warren article that came on a couple of years ago. So previous to that, when someone in a particular department was retiring, that expense was in the department's budget in their line item. And
Correct.
That really skewed the budgets also. So, so by pulling it out into its own reserve account, lets the department stay more true to what their ongoing recurring expenses are, and there's a reserve in advance that's helping fund those, so the town's not financially hurt by someone who might be retiring. So that's just a reminder. I think that was an article a few years ago that got established.
Is there funding in the current budget for FY27?
Yes.
For the Okay.
Yeah, so it is. And, what we do ask departments is, if they are aware of an expected or anticipated retirement, to notify us as soon as possible so that we can track that throughout the fiscal year. Now, there is language where, for whatever reason, if we weren't able to make the transfer like we're requesting here, we could account for that at the time where we are able to replenish that account. So that option is available. But obviously with people that have worked for the town for a long time, it can, that 100,000 can get eaten up pretty fast. So I see Nancy has her hand raised.
Does this fund for the retirement, does it encompass the entire, like the school side of the budget too? Or is it just the town side of the budget that for those retirements, police, fire, town hall employees? Or is it for retirees in the school too? Or does the school absorb that into their own budget for retirement?
So Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least from this current fiscal year, this is all on the town side.
Yeah, this is an account just for the town side retirements. The school, they do their own thing.
Okay.
All right.
Hugh has his hand up. You have.
Go ahead, Hugh. Thank you.
Sorry, Hugh.
Yeah, can accumulation be unlimited forever? I know some organizations do that. I remember many days ago when I was in the Navy, but some also has a use it or lose it kind of thing, the maximum amount that you can accrue. How does this work in practice?
So in terms of accruals and what's allowed, it's a little bit varied based on union versus non-union. You know, generally speaking, you know, sick time, you know, you are able to accrue that. Vacation, you know, again, across the different unions, there is a use it or lose it component to that based on how many years you have in and how much vacation you have. I believe there's a minimal carryover year over year.
Thank you.
All right, so if there's no questions, so Article 3, again, this is something that you've seen on prior town meeting warrants. This article would transfer $182,068 from free cash or surplus revenue into the town's general stabilization funds. It acts like a savings account, you know, in case of emergency or future need from the town. So that 182,000 is equates to 5% of the free cash that was certified back in October.
Right, and just to remind, so Chris has previously given us a free cash spreadsheet, which sums all the uses of free cash, which this is the number that had been on that sheet that we've had for a bit.
Correct. Thanks, Karen.
Right, just to make sure, because nothing, just to reiterate, since you gave us the draft select board budget and presentation, and then the select board made its recommendation, there's virtually nothing has changed so there's nothing new that we're seeing that wasn't somewhere before. So everything is still the same. So I just want to clarify that these numbers are no different.
Yeah, so just from, I think the last time we had discussed the overall allocation, I did make a note that the board had planned to have this capital stabilization in there. I think there was some discussion on that. So, you know, just going off our prior discussion, Article 4 does add in the $182,068 to the capital stabilization fund, again, for future capital needs. Again, 5% of the free cash allocation. Article 5 is a allocation of $91,034 into the Special Education Stabilization Fund. You know, I will note that this is slightly lower. So I know last year and this year the goal was 5%. You know, what is being moved forward is 2.5%. So half of the 182,000. And again, this stabilization accounts to help the town manage unexpected increases to special education expenses. So as I scroll down, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Articles 6 and 7 are both tied to each other. So Article 6, this article proposes establishing a new stabilization fund to cover future collective bargaining agreements, as well as compensation adjustments for both union and non-union employees. This was something that we had discussed at prior meetings. And so again, this creates a special fund that assist for the costs associated with what I referenced. And so Article 7 is tied to that. So the first one is the creation of the stabilization fund, and this article would actually be making appropriations to it. So if Article 6 passes, Article 7 would request the addition of a $108,000 from free cash to start putting some funds into this proposed stabilization fund.
Boy, I'm not at all sure about this. Only because I'm not a negotiator of contracts back and forth, but my instinct is if I were negotiating on this side and I look at the balance sheet and there's $108,000 whatever sitting there ready to be used for collective bargaining, that's where I start, rather than I start and work up as the money that's available. I just say that's okay. You got that money. Let's see what else what other money you've got. I understand the desire to have it for the future. It's perfectly sensible. I just worry about it from a psychological negotiating stance.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fair point. I know that this is something new, right? So what I would say to that is, and I think similar to the other stabilization funds, the idea is that, going forward, that this is a routine investment into the stabilization fund.
But there's
The other thing I would,
the others are under the control, the town meeting, et cetera. You want to spend it for this purpose, spend it for this purpose. Here you've got a competitor who wants to get it for their own purposes and be collective bargaining.
yeah, so I think,
Give them a head start.
yeah, so I think that this is one piece of it, right? I know was prior discussions at the last meeting with regards to, how do we go about, looking at employee compensation as a whole, and what can the town do to, better financially plan ahead? Because, the reality is, yes, there are, agreements that come up and expire, and, we renegotiate. And I think, the idea is not to say, I think it's, to be fair, go into it and really try to, come up with a mutually acceptable agreement, right? And so I think from the town side, just like we do here, our budget and our financial position, we're transparent. So again, this is one option. I think, again, definitely open to continuing the conversation on this.
Yeah, all I would say is you're right in a rational world, but I think the experience I have seen directly and indirectly is that union negotiations don't start out with a rational view. It starts out with how much can we get. So maybe that's the end result. Anyway, I've said my piece, and I understand there's another point of view.
Thanks, you. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you. So again, because, I just talked about the retirement thing and that was just the town. Is the vision for this collective bargaining to be used by all of the unions, including the schools union, which is the largest union with personnel in town? So is it intended to just be for collective bargaining on the town side, or across the board for all employees in the town?
So as being proposed, obviously I look at it from the side of the town, right? I think.
Why is that, Chris?
So
Why?
I think when we go over and we look at the budget as a whole, right? I think, I guess similar to how we look at the special education stabilization funds, as I get more acclimated to the needs of the school and how we can better financially assist and prepare, to support their needs over there, I'm open to continuing the conversation. I think from, again, my standpoint, coming in, this is something that I've seen as a practice that's worked in several communities. Why I more or less recommended it go forward. But the other thing I would just note, at least when it comes to the contracts, is I don't see that from the school side. So it's I guess difficult to talk about that, but I'm open to talking about that.
Well,
So.
no, so the reason I say that first of all, I don't like it at all. I agree with Hugh. Hugh, we're agreeing a lot tonight. I agree with you. I don't think it puts us in a fair bargaining position. And I think that it's not fair collectively to do it with the unions when their contracts come up at different times. So what's the first ones in line because their contract negotiation starts here. They get their first shot at that, and then the next people, and then they get a shot. And then as it goes down the line, you know, is it going to be a question of, oh, well, you gave preference to the fire union, you gave preference to this union. I think it's a recipe. I think there's a better, I don't know what the idea, I don't know what I like the thought process behind it. So don't get me wrong. I just don't think that this way is fair to all of the collective bargaining unions. I don't think it's fair when you're in the position the town is and the schools to make those decisions. But if you're asking for a funding source to provide additional support for unions on the town side, and you're asking for everyone's tax dollars just to go to that, and you're not looking at it from a town-wide, including the school side of the budget on a proposal of this nature, I think you're going to see a lot of pushback on it from that perspective. But other than that, I don't like the bargaining position it potentially can put the town in. And again, I don't find the equality with the timing of the unions when they're coming up and seeking contract negotiations. The pot goes and then somebody else doesn't get it. I don't like it. So that's just my 2 cents.
Oh, it's fair. Yeah, I mean, I'll just note that the language itself is, it does offer the town and provides it flexibility in terms of how the funds can be utilized, you know, and again, because this is a stabilization account, you know, with however it's used, we would obviously make sure we're mindful of that so that, again, we're not building in deficits within the budget for future fiscal years. So, you know, again, I think every contract has its expiration date, you know, and, you know, we're mindful of that, right? And we do try to provide equity when we think about compensation across the various unions. So I'll leave it there.
So I just want to make a couple of quick points too. So if the intent of this article is to be for all unions excluding the schools union, if it doesn't say that, I'm not sure there'll be intentionality to that. So there's no restriction on what unions that it would go to. So I'm curious how that would play out. But I mean, I don't really love this either, because I think if there's dollars sitting there for collective bargaining, it just doesn't put the negotiations in a good way. The money's there, and it's going to be earmarked for it, and it will get used. So I'm all for saving the money in case there's needs, and maybe it's better in the general stabilization fund, and where it's not specifically restricted or specifically called out. In either way, it would need 2/3 vote at town meeting. So it could be in the stabilization fund, but just not specifically restricted. Those are just my thoughts too. So go ahead, Nancy.
Just participating on in a lot of the negotiations when I was on the school committee. One of the very first questions the unions send out through their representatives is, what's the stabilization fund? Give us that number. They automatically, I can't imagine that the other unions aren't asking the same question. So if you have a particular fund, I mean, the stabilization fund, there's an argument that it can go for a lot of other different uses, right, Karen, that what you just said, as opposed to earmarking a particular, resource of funds for that particular purpose. And again, it's not, the general wording of this could be used by anybody in the town. So if the intent is to just have it for the town side, then it's got to say that. And I just think you'll run into a ton of obstacles because of that. And I don't like it because it does specifically say for that purpose. And I have an issue with that, as when you're in a negotiation position and you're the negotiator, it does put you in a pretty poor position.
All right, well, I think we can move on. I think we're all, had our comments there, unless anybody else did, but we as a committee will also have time to deliberate as we make our recommendations, but I think we all clearly understand what the intent of the article is. So I think we're clear on there. All right, go ahead, Chris.
All right, moving on. So, borrowing in anticipation of revenue. This is something, again, that's been on the warrant before. This allows the treasurer to borrow short-term funds if needed before the revenues are collected. Yeah, this is a standard practice to ensure the town can pay bills throughout the year. So Article 9, if I can scroll down here, our computer, is the acceptance of the capital committee report. This was something that was done in late December and put together, but you can see that the committee brought in a number of projects they're looking to support, 2.29 million in capital projects such as police cruisers, fire equipment, school HVAC upgrades, IT servers, playground improvements, and town vehicles. Most of this is coming from free cash or surplus revenue, as well as the items at the bottom, which are coming from the respective enterprise funds.
Chris, I only have one question about this, not the items on here, but you've used the term both free cash and surplus revenue. So
Yeah.
is that going to be confusing?
So I guess my experience is I've used the term surplus revenue. So I know again, it all depends on what's the commonplace. I can add both. I could put in parentheses if you think that would be beneficial for people. I
I'm
really
just
have
saying
no
that
preference there.
in some articles it says free cash.
Yeah.
And in this it says surplus revenue. So
No,
it doesn't
excellent
matter to
point.
me as long as it's consistent.
No, excellent point. Excellent point. All right. Article 10 is salaries and stipends of elected officials. Again, this is on the warrant every year. It sets the FY 2027 salaries and stipends for elected officials, including the select board, assessors, board of health members, town clerk, and the moderator.
All right, well, the next one's the big one. So let me ask the committee, do we want to discuss the budget now, or do we want to skip over that one and get through the rest of the articles and then come back to that one? Oh, Q, you're on mute.
Thank you. I would skip over since that's a discussion on itself.
Okay, we will. That's what I thought somebody might say. So we'll try to get back to it tonight. So it's already 8 o'clock, but I think we can get through the rest of these articles because I would like to talk about the budget tonight. Okay.
All right, so I'll just skip over that for now. Article 12, again, every year we fund the Marine Services Enterprise. So you can see here for FY 27, the expected salaries, expenses, capital outlay. You also know that we do from the town side, charge an indirect cost. And so, at the bottom, you see user charges for $240,428. So with that, I would just note that the costs for the enterprise fund are through user fees rather than the general taxes, as is the same with the other ones that we have coming down here. Article 13 is funding the water enterprise account. Again, salaries, $2,500, expenses, $300,050. There's indirect cost of $15,000, And the two funding sources for this account are user charges of 234,000, and then we are for the FY27 recommending 83,550 from retained earnings. So I will note here that this account has been operating in the structural deficit. So this is something that the board took action on this past year with a rate increase, and it's something that I expect at a meeting coming up, they will also be adjusting rates to account for that for FY27. So
What are the expenses for? 300,000 in expenses? What is that used for?
give me 1 second. Let me see if I can pull that up quickly. So
Is this the
The-
payment that was due to the city of Fall River for
No.
that overdue payment that was there for years?
no, so part of it is, we purchase the water, right? So, I mean, that's the biggest expense there, of about $250,000. And then, we have just testing, equipment repair. As I mentioned, if we have details, if there's any work that needs to be done, software, water meter costs, office supplies. So it's a little bit of everything that goes into
Okay.
it. But the biggest piece of that is the actual cost to purchase the water from Fall River.
Okay, all right. And then the user charges are what backfills that to pay for the water that was purchased,
Correct.
in addition to other maintenance things and whatnot that need to take place during the operation of the water system.
That's
So
correct.
what happened to that payment that was due to the city of Fall River? That was
So,
negotiated for a long time. I thought a settlement had finally been reached and we did have to make a payment to them.
the board did approve and sign the settlement, and it is currently with Fall River. So, again, once that has fully executed on their side, the settlement will go over there.
But is the funding available for that?
It is, yes.
In what
So,
account?
and that's not that's not indicated here because this is the operational budget.
Right, right. But
Um,
out of what source would the select board be paying that?
So some of it is ARPA and some of it is through the retained earnings from the enterprise account.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So moving on. Article 14 is funding the town beach enterprise. And salaries just over 100,000, expenses 60,750, with indirect costs of 20,000. And the user charges to balance against that would be $181,850. Article 15, again, on the warrant every year, is funding our community television. The total for FY27 for the cost is $237,040. Article 16, again, you see this every year. This is setting the maximum spending limits for the town's various revolving accounts. These funds are supported by the fees and the other program revenue that they receive. So you'll see that these maximum expenditures, they periodically go up. Again, based on the recommendations that we receive, and the maximum expenditures you can see are in the right-hand column for this upcoming fiscal year.
Could you tell me why the recreation department revolving account is not on this list? It's never on this list. They operate as through a revolving account for their expenses, but
Yes.
we don't have them on their list, on this list.
So I can follow up with town council. Oh, Nicole here.
Nicole has her hand up.
Yeah.
Because it's a departmental revolving account, it's not a recreation revolving account under Mass General Law. It was established differently than these are.
Okay.
Yeah, I will note here that, in terms of the revolving accounts year over year, as I mentioned before, the maximum spending limit changes on these, but, we also, I guess as we put this list together, we do look back to see if there was a revolving account established. Our council makes sure that everything that needs to be on this list is on this list. But
Okay.
yeah, so I'll just note on that.
Al has his
If
hand up.
Yeah, I just
Hi,
want to tee off on, hi, Chris, on
Hi, Al.
what Cindy's question was. Why isn't it? I mean, are we talking about a legal definition, an accounting definition, or a practical definition of where this money is coming from and where it's going? Sometimes I think that we can kind of, I'm not talking about you, but in general, hide behind the veil of legality and reality, as my grandmother used to say. So why don't we understand where the income is coming from on the rec department? Which I think is really good. I'm not beating them up. I'm just saying, but there is income coming in, and where is it going to, and where is it going to?
So happy to, I guess, follow up on that, and Nicole, and I can get you an answer on that in
Okay,
terms of what the differences are here, versus what you see in the last article on the revolving funds.
that's fine. That's a perfect answer to the question, but if you can get back to us, that would be really great.
Absolutely. All right, so continue on. Article 17, I think, unless there's any other questions, it's the community preservation article. I'll note that this language was sent over by CPC, similar structure to prior years in terms of how it's displayed on the warrant. So now moving on to Article 18. So Article 18 is an appropriation from the retained earnings of the water enterprise account to be used to request a rate study. So as I just mentioned, that line has been operating in a structural deficit. I will also note, just in terms of the enterprise itself, the town really doesn't have a water department. I would say that the responsibilities to administer the department are really spread throughout a few different staff and departments within town. But I think, when we look at the operation as a whole, especially one that's growing, I think that this is something where, the select board has, put this forward to support a rate study, just to see, what the rates need to be, taking into consideration the operation and, expected expenditures in the future that fund anticipates. So that is Article 18. Article 19, this is something that has been on the warrant before. It is a appropriation for replacement roll-off containers, the amount of $28,000. It's for purchasing one roll-off container for the transfer station. All right, let's continue down here. Article 20, Sue had previously discussed that, but this is its location on the warrant. Article 21 is appropriation for some training sessions. So let me just pull up my notes on this. This article is $29,379. It's funding 2 joint active shooter training sessions. And this is in collaboration with the police department and the fire department. So, there was discussion in initial drafts of the budget to have this as a separate line item. but after discussions with the prior town administrator, both departments felt that having it set aside as a separate article, was prudent.
Yeah, and I believe both chiefs did discuss that when they did their budget presentations to FinCom. So we have discussed this
Yeah.
article as well.
Yes.
And I would, personally support that completely because of everything that's going on in this world.
Mhm. March 24th, you'll have your day in court to recommend that.
I'm looking forward to it, Karen.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
So moving on for Article 22, this article would set aside 75,000 to provide matching funds for state or federal grants. This is something that the town has done in the past, and it's helped us secure additional funding from different sources for our various projects in town. So again, that would be coming from free cash. Article 23. This article allocates $81,000 to purchase computers and technology for the Westport Community Schools, including Chromebooks, laptops, and desktops. I will note that this article came about because originally this $81,000 was proposed within the FY27 school department budget. But after some discussions and just looking at that proposal, again, it felt appropriate to set that aside here as a separate article. So that is Article 23. So moving down here. So Article 24, this is a acceptance of a personal property tax bill exemption. This article would stop issuing personal property tax bills under $2,000 in value starting in FY 2027. The idea behind this is it reduces the administrative cost, for very small tax bills. So, for what you are getting back in terms of revenue, it's really not worth the administrative cost to send the bill. So that is why that is being proposed for this meeting. Scrolling down, Article 25, I'll say is indirectly finance related, but essentially this article would propose replacing the current town bylaw language on personnel, and it would allow the select board to formalize a personnel administration system, and specifically of the board would establish a personnel policy that covers hiring, compensation, benefits, and other things that are currently outlined within the personnel bylaw. So with that, just continuing on. Is there any questions on Article 26?
No, I
All
don't
right.
think that's, yep. Move on. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So Article 27 is highlighted because there is still ongoing discussions on this. But at a very high level, this article, or the intent of this article is increase the fines for illegal overnight parking at the town landings, allow for officials to create parking restrictions or requirements at those locations. So, I think right now the feedback is from both, and this isn't just for the landings, but there's also been discussions with the beach committee about, the overall amount of some of these fines, $20 in some cases. People would gladly pay that to access some of our town facilities and public spaces. So, I think the idea behind this is to really carry a penalty. So that's the intent of it. Now, I know that the language itself just, we want to make sure from a legal standpoint that we're aligned with what the request was from the Landing Commission. And so, again, that's why it's highlighted, because I know council still has some additional work on this, but that's more or less the intent of this article that you see here. So the proposal would be updating these fines from $20 to $200.
My only comment on that, Chris, is raise it more than 200. That's not even, if you're going to raise it, raise it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, there was a lot of discussion on that just in terms of the amount. And, I will note that, although the beaches and the Landing Commission kind of operate separately in terms of how those fees are established, I think their goal is to make sure that whatever that final fee amount is that they're aligned. Because that also helps our police with enforcement as well, if there's just one consistent fee for the various sites. So that is 27. These next several.
Yep. Right. Next ones are zoning, so I don't.
Yep. So these are
Not
all.
sure this becomes when we all fall asleep, right?
Yeah. So a lot of
I don't
proposed
think there's
zoning
anything
amendments.
financial at all, right?
Yeah, just the last thing I want to mention on here is just acceptance of Stacy Lane. So the hearing on this is planned for later this month with the select board, but in anticipation of that, there is a placeholder here on the warrant for the acceptance of that. So that is all 34 articles
Not
for
bad.
town meeting.
That is not bad. So thank you for going through. And so what I'm going to ask is there's 3 members that were not present here tonight. So hopefully I'm going to ask them to watch this video, and then they may have a follow-up question that they weren't able to ask because they weren't here. And then of course, as we may have a follow-up question or two, but I don't intend next week for you to redo the whole presentation of going through the warrant again, unless we have a question on something. So thank you for going through that. And Al's got his hand up, and then we're going to
Yeah.
circle back to the budget.
Just briefly, I just want to reiterate what Karen said about the fines on the beach and the landings and whatever. You have to smack people in the forehead with a 2x4. You can't, you just can't trickle. So I'm just picking a number out of the air. $500 or whatever is the number that I would use to get their attention. Otherwise it's almost like chump change. So, you guys have to do what you do, but I think the number is too low.
I had 500 in my head too, Al. So
Okay.
go ahead, Hugh.
Oh, you guys are meaner than I am. I do agree the basic principle gets their attention, but it seems to me for most people, $200, for going to the beach, sitting in your car gets your attention. However, I'm with that. Leave it up to Chris to be the bad guy. The other question I wanted to ask was, in connection with the budget, the conservation and energy for 200,000. What is that all about?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last thing you broke up there.
In the budget, there's expenditure of 200,000 for energy conservation and so forth. What does that buy us?
Hold on, let me just pull that up. Unfortunately, I don't know what is being referenced here.
Was it an article, Hugh?
Yeah,
you're
what's-
referencing? What
An
article?
I don't have it in front of me now, but we can pick that up again. Don't worry, Chris. When I saw that, I just wondered what fit into that category.
Maybe Nicole has the answer.
So the energy and conservation, it's a revolving account that was set up quite a few years ago for oh my goodness, rebates that we were getting for green
Okay.
communities. So what we're using the money now for is we're paying the electric cost of the charging station at the annex. And some of the consultant that we, Kathy Stanley, that we use for our green communities. They, you know, she gets the grants for like the HVAC system at the town hall. I think we did some other heating elements or something at one of the schools. So that's what we're using it for. So that's where we were
Okay.
putting the rebates.
Thank you, Nicole. That's
You're welcome.
So Nicole, on that same point, is there still money coming into that account?
At the moment, there is not, but I know there are rebates coming for the HVAC system at town hall.
We
But
finished
the 200,000 is just the spending limit.
Right,
So
right,
if the money is there, we can spend up to that amount, but
right.
we're not actively putting any money in it unless there are rebates that are coming back from doing the projects.
Okay. Okay. The other point that I had going back to the article about the fines for parking, I guess one of the other wrinkles you have is that the town dock at the point is, you know, it's a very active location, and there are people that are to park there overnight, right? So whether or not the fishermen that go out on the boat overnight, it's not like they have a parking lot or a dedicated parking lot that they can use. So I guess some system would have to come up with a way to identify, whether or not those vehicles belong to workers on the boats that have left their vehicles there overnight at the landing. So, I'm sure that they would not appreciate getting a $200 or $500 ticket if they were there out on their boat overnight. But anyway, that's just a small piece of that.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's circle back to the budget. So Chris did a terrific job this year, picking up where the previous town administrator left off and kept us in the loop of changes that Chris was making, and provided us with the proposed select board budget before it was voted on, just to give us a look. And throughout the meetings, I've asked if anybody had any issues with anything, and so nothing has come up of any substance that I've heard that in regards to the select board's budget. So certainly the finance committee needs to make its recommendation on a budget, and I'd like to hear if anybody has any different discussion of a change or discuss change from the select board's presentation of the budget. Go ahead, Cindy.
So I don't know if this is an appropriate time to bring it up, but it's my understanding that the schools may want to revisit some additional funding to their budget. And I see that Evan is with us this evening, and I would like to entertain that if that's what he is here to discuss. If not, then I spoke out of turn. But if he is, I'd like to hear what their proposal may be.
Sure. Before we do that, I would like to hear from committee members on what their thoughts are on the present budget as it stands, if they have any concerns or challenges or anything in regard to the budget before, and then we will certainly open it up to Evan. Okay, so nothing at the moment.
I think it's balanced. Would we like to see more revenue? Yes, of course. But that's not going to happen at least in this fiscal year. So I think we, are proposing a pretty good balanced budget to the select board, or at least endorsing what they have proposed.
Mhm. Great, thank you. Thank you for that. So again, this process for us, in order to come up with a finance committee budget, it's important that we all share what, if there is something that we would like to change, or isn't sufficient. So again, we've gone through all the departments. Every department has made requests that may not have been able to be put in the select board's budget. Some of those Chris was able to incorporate throughout the process. One of those was adding a police position into the budget. So that was one of the items that we discussed. The Board of Health had requested a part-time position, and I believe that did get layered back into the budget. IT, I think, was short on some dollars after they got their estimates for some services in, and I believe, Chris, you were able to add that into the budget. So many of the things that were brought up in the department meetings were at least somewhat addressed to the best that we can. So I know off the top of my head, there was a request for fire department personnel, and so that was not added to the budget. So that's one of those that's not in the budget. So I'm just trying to make us aware of, remind us of what we kind of talked about and some of the issues that are in there. But I think, Chris, you did, again, a fantastic job trying to incorporate everything that you could into the budget. So I commend you for a balanced budget as you presented. Go ahead, Cindy.
I forgot to take my hand down. Al has his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Al.
Briefly, in the last packet in the Google Docs, I just want to let everybody know there was a request. Nancy made the request a couple of meetings ago about CIPC and the where we stand on the 1, the 2, and the 3 requests of capital expenditures. It is there. It's buried a little bit. I don't have it in front of me right now, but anyway, it's there. So I thank Dick Brewer and Jim and Chris for, putting that in. So it's there if anybody wants to do a deeper dive on the current and especially the future expenditures that we need to do.
Great. Thank you for that. Hugh, go ahead.
Question. We raised various questions about the fund for collective bargaining. No conclusions. It's a warrant article rather than a budget item per se. How do we raise that? Back through Chris, back to the selectmen? Because it's a matter of really a policy rather than the budget per se. Or well, that's my question. How does our reactions get reflected?
Well, it's a good question, Hugh, and it would seem as though when the finance committee would make its recommendation, if we didn't want to recommend it, we could simply not recommend it.
Good idea, but we don't want to blindside the selectmen though with that,
Right,
with that kind of inclusion. So
right.
maybe Chris is the reporter, having heard our
Right.
discussions and can relay the thoughts. I don't want to put it on you, Chris, if that doesn't work well, but what do you think?
No,
about
I mean, and certainly, so the next board meeting's on the 23rd. I know, your committee's gonna be meeting over the next couple weeks. So I certainly update the board, as I go to meetings, and obviously if there's anything noteworthy to share. I would also say too, if there's anything that you want to send off to the board, or, I can pass that along to the members, just in terms of general correspondence, if there's anything. I would say at the time that the recommendations are submitted, the board still has that ability to make adjustments or, take that recommendation under advisement before, approving the final warrant for posting. So,
Cindy's absolutely right as to that procedure. I think that's right, but it would be nice, I think better than a letter or something. You're reporting on the tenor. We didn't vote against it. We talked about it, expressed various concerns, and the selectmen aren't stupid. We raised those concerns. They may already thought about it, but reconsider that. If they come to a conclusion they really
Sure,
want to do it, okay, then they'll respond again.
I'm happy to relay that message.
Good point. Good point. Thank you for that. So getting back to the budget, we can certainly hear what Evan has to say, but I am curious if anybody, what everyone's thoughts are on the budget right now. So I haven't heard from Nancy or Hugh. I don't think you've said either way any concerns you have on the budget.
That was not, no, I just want to mention that issue before I forgot about it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Nancy.
I'm still looking at it, but I mean, I want to hear what Evan has to say. I want to see how close we are with the schools. Again, it doesn't seem like Evan made some recommendations when they presented. It doesn't seem like that was received by Chris to make a change. It didn't move him to make a change. And so that didn't go before the select board. So I'm going to be interested to see how far away we are apart, because I know this is Chris's first year, and I'd hate to see meeting thing that we've seen in the past if we're very close to coming up with an agreement with the schools. Because that is, again, I don't like surprises. I like to have agreements. So that's why I'll be interested to hear that piece of it. Thank you.
Nope, absolutely. And we'll I don't want to make Evan wait any longer. The poor guy, it's 8:37, right? So just trying to understand how everyone's feeling on other departments as well. So, but let's hear from Evan, and then we can come back to that conversation. So Evan, are you still with us?
I sure am.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. So, as Cindy was trying to open it up for you, I wanted to at least kind of hear from the committee in terms of just generalities on the budget. So why don't you, I'll leave the floor to you to talk about the school budget.
Well, thank you, Karen. Thank you, Cindy. I also want to thank the town administrator for working with me and the school department and the school committee throughout this, throughout the process. We started this back in the fall, so as we start to wind up here, just want to thank everyone that's been involved. So the total gap that's currently between the school's recommended budget figure and what the select board had voted on their recommendation is $135,000. I think if we can help close part of that gap, I think that would still satisfy the district's needs. I had conversations with our business department and the superintendent, and I think that if we're able to increase the school's recommended budget by about $80,000, the school department is willing to make internal budget decisions to make up the rest of that. So I certainly won't opine on the source of that, since that's within this committee's purview, but I will note that even if that figure were solely from free cash, it would still reflect a decrease of about $52,000 from last year. I think the current recommendation sits at 348 or 350. And I'll note on that as well that the school committee and the administration shares the goal that this committee has expressed in the town administrator and select board of reducing the school's reliance on free cash. And we've built this budget, and I think we'll continue to build future budgets around that theme. So I just wanted to note that, and I think that the gap, given relatively speaking how low it is, I think that if we can help close that at least to a degree, I think that would still satisfy the district's needs. So thank you.
Thank you. And can you clarify, Evan, the 135,000? I think the difference, and Chris can also, is that was a new position that was being proposed.
So-
that Chris removed from the budget? Maybe we
So-
can clarify. I think that 135 is specific to something, right?
Sure. So that was a tranche of that fell under our service delivery section of our budget. So that was actually a few different both reductions. There were positions that weren't being backfilled. So that was a net change. So it included that career pathways as well as a social studies which we had discussed at our presentation because of the number of students in that particular department and there not being the number of teachers that some other departments had, so the class sizes were larger. So that's what that covers. It's a net number, so it's not necessarily like, it doesn't equate to 2 or 3 positions exactly because it's a net. That's us not backfilling a position. That's some rearrangement on the personnel side. So that's a net figure. Obviously, the town meeting approves the overall appropriation in the school department, depending on what decisions that we make after the approved number comes in after town meeting can decide kind of where, what if we're filling those positions or say something comes up and we the committee voted to make a reduction elsewhere, that those adjustments can happen. But that was I think the tranche that you're referring to.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Go ahead, Cindy.
So I'd like to just really come right out and say that, we've got a $54 million plus budget. We've been very fortunate this year. Our free cash number was very high. And it was last year as well. I'm not really sure it's going to be that going forward since we've upped our revenue estimates a little bit and we may not have as good fortune in years going forward. But as you can see, going through the various articles on the warrant, we're filling a lot of buckets that we haven't been able to fill in the past. It used to be that the stabilization fund was an afterthought and it was really anything that was left over. And sometimes it was $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 that we could put in there. We're putting in the 5% in that. We're putting the 5% in the capitalization stabilization fund. We're continuing to put some additional funds in the special education fund. We're able to fund many things. I don't want to crater this budget over $80,000. I mean, I think that if the schools are willing to trim their 135 requests down to 80, and we're sitting on 54 million, they found 50,000 that they could trim out of their $23 million budget. We can find another 80. I don't want to go to any kind of pushing and shoving or tug of war over $80,000 in a $55 million budget. So I am totally in support of finding a funding source for the $80,000 to make this process go forward in an adult manner, in a cohesive manner, in a manner that we are one town and we are one funding source for the entire town. And if this makes it work, then it makes it work. It is a reduction from previous years' reliance on free cash, which is a good thing. If it were an increase, I might feel differently. But they have shown the exercise, they've gone through the exercise to reduce their reliance on free cash. And let's hope next year, maybe it'll be down another 50,000 and we can be well on the way to getting to that net zero. But I fully support finding an additional $80,000 to add to the school budget.
Thanks, Cindy. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said it better, Cindy. I $80,000 on 54 million or 55, whatever the number is literally a drop in the bucket. We can find that money. And I always joke around that, excuse me, the Lees die young and the Grundy side of my family lives forever. So I just hope to split it down the middle. And that is that's exactly what the school department has done, is they've split it down the middle and they've done everything that they can to move the needle downwards. And we need to support them and not just sit here and you know say be niggling about a few $1,000. I mean, which is all we're talking about in percentage wise. So I'm in support of finding the 80 grand.
Great. Go ahead, Hugh. Thank you, Al.
I'm a little less enthusiastic than Cindy and Al, but having said that, it's something we can live with, and we need to come to a conclusion. Because finding it in the town side can equally argue that it could be found on the school side, but I'm not going to get into that and say that coming to a resolution, it is doable, so we should do it.
Yeah. I agree too. I mean, the reality is what we've been asking is to not increase the free cash needs of the budget. And we've been able to reduce it. So 2 years ago, free cash was 650,000. Last year, it dropped to 480,000. And even with this, it's down to 430. So we're making the strides in the right direction. And so I think, would I like to bring the free cash down more? Sure. But is 80,000 reasonable? I have no issue with it. So I'm in support of it too.
I'm in total support, as you all might guess.
Thanks, Duncan. Go ahead. Nancy, did you have your hand up and down?
Yeah, I support it. I think, thank you, Evan. I think what you've recommended is making the effort to split it. And I can appreciate what Cindy said of where we going to stand. It's like, what hill we standing on, and this is not the one. So I did want to ask why the special needs budget you only funded it by 2.5% versus the 5%, which was the goal. And the only reason I ask is because this was a year with free cash, more so than previous years. I was the architect behind that because I saw what happened to school budgets when you got students in with significant needs and what, the result is and what you have to do and pay for it. So, I mean, that was my only question. Like, that's not something we can, just like the stabilization fund, and I'm a big advocate that you need that. I think it's important. That special needs fund is really the stabilization fund for the schools when that happens. And it happens more times than not. So, the budget is the budget. I'm not going to push back on it, but, I don't know why it only got funded by 2.5%. I just had a question of why that was, and everything else seemed to have been funded fully.
I'll just speak very quickly to that. I know, when the board was looking at that, those recommended allocations, that was a point that was brought up. And that was the recommendation you see here, or indicated here within the warrant, is where they settled on it.
So that was a select board decision?
Yes.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
So Evan, I appreciate your, you and the new school superintendent really focusing on being budget conscious and really driving this down. So I think, as Cindy had mentioned, if it was asking for more free cash, I'm not really sure I would be able to support that. But I do appreciate every effort that you and the school department is making, and you are shaving it down. And so with that continued support, it has my recommendation to do that too.
I appreciate that, Karen. And I just want to quickly thank again you and the Finance Committee. I know that there's no votes taken tonight, but certainly if the committee has any further questions, feel free as always to reach out to me.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Okay, so now back to our budget. So I guess settling on a school number, does anybody have any other pluses or minuses or issues of any other departments or anything else that's in the budget? If not, we may be able to settle on on a budget relatively quickly. Okay, well, what I'll do, I'll take the select board's budget for the next meeting and I'll put a column that would be a draft of the finance committee's budget. We're certainly not voting on anything tonight, and we don't have 3 members to get feedback from them as well. But we can proceed on there. So again, we'll talk about it in next meeting, hopefully come to a finalization of that, and then the recommendation will be on March 24th for everything.
Can't wait.
Yeah, all right. Wow, onward we go.
That means we get the month of April off.
Well, I know. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, Chris, thank you for everything that you've done. I think you did a terrific job with the budget, and you left it in a terrific place. We're making a small little tweak, nothing of significance, hopefully. But thank you for everything. So we will continue to the next item on the agenda, which is, we had one department, the town accountant, that we hadn't done. So we should actually hear from Nicole really
Poor
quickly.
Nicole.
She's still here.
I know, poor
thing.
Nicole.
I know.
Yeah, are you asleep?
Nah, you don't need to hear from me. So, I sent you guys the budget and the narrative. Pretty much hasn't really changed a lot from last year, but I apologize for the dogs. I've increased the 3% for the salaries. I've increased my line for software. The new system is up and running. We still have a few glitches here and there with reporting, but we're working to get it all settled. That's pretty much it.
And Nicole, this is a year for you for OPEB reval, right?
Yes, this is the big year. And actually, there's a new company. Sue is working on having a new actuary for the coming year. So we put the same amount in the budget, but I think it might come in a little bit lower. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think we have the final numbers yet.
Just on that note, talking about OPEB, I know we make a deposit to a contribution to OPEB every year. The audit was just recently released, and in the notation, our OPEB funding is now up over 20%. It's 21.5%, which is way above the state average. I mean, the state average is still, I believe, down in single digits. So we've been doing a good job maintaining our stance on how much we contribute towards OPEB.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Nicole on her budget? Great, okay. I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a reserve transfer request. It's coming from the fire department, and it is, the amount requested is 16,000, so that's 462.26. And it is for an emergency elevator repair. I'm reading off the off that. It says this specifically the replacement and repair of the elevator door, board, and motor. The expenditure is extraordinary for the following reason. The elevator is nearly 17 years old, and while preventative maintenance is performed annually, the failure of the equipment was unexpected and the cost more than 50% of this entire line item. So that's Chief Baldwin making the request.
I'd like to speak to that for a second. I
Sure.
talked to Danny a couple of times about that. First of all, I can't believe that it's been 17 years. I mean, you want to talk about how time flies, and stuff happens. But I do know that they have done regular annual maintenance, and this was an extraordinary situation that happened. And I would just recommend to the finance board that we pull the money out of the reserve fund, because there's no handicapped accessibility there. I mean, you go down the list of things that can't happen, without that. So this was not negligence. This was not anything to do with other than stuff happens. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Cindy, go ahead.
So I guess I have a question for Chris. I know you mentioned at last night's select board meeting, the total bill for the storm, which we've now managed to forget about since most of the snow managed to melt in the last 2 days, which is a good thing. But it's not going to be erased from us financially. So you had mentioned at the meeting last night that the total cost, and I don't know if that was just overtime related or if that was just excess cost or extra cost for the storm, was in the range of $122,000, right? Give or take.
Yep.
So our reserve fund, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, is about 150,000. I know we have a $50,000 snow and ice budget. Is there any provision that we could add to the town meeting warrant to appropriate some funding to backfill some of that? I mean, I'm not sure when we see the bills for this, whether or not our reserve fund and snow and ice fund are going to be sufficient. So these are two withdrawals that we've already had from the reserve fund now, and there may be other things that would come up during the normal course of business. Go ahead, Chris.
Yes. So I was just going to say, so on that point, I know I've had conversations with Nicole, and we already have received invoices for some of that work that was done during the storm. So, and obviously when it comes to, payroll expenses, that's, we process that, again, during our regular payroll cycle. So these costs are, being incurred. Now, I would say one of the concerns that was raised is, well, how does this impact the departmental budgets, obviously, for the rest of the current fiscal year. And so I think, obviously I'm not really prepared to present anything to the finance committee. That's a conversation with Nicole, and obviously looking at our various line items in terms of if we, if it's determined to be appropriate to come to the finance committee. But I think, I mean, I guess as I get more information, have those conversations about that and the reimbursement timeline for what we're eligible for, I can keep this board updated.
Yeah, well, it's not even so much the reimbursement. I'm just talking about if, there were contractors, there were outside contractors involved, there was overtime costs involved. So there was, real money above and beyond what their normal budget would pay. So if they're going to come for a reserve fund request that's in excess of what's in their snow and ice removal account. Well, my question was, should we have a line item transfer in the warrant that includes a transfer of money from some account into either the reserve fund or the snow and ice removal account to make sure we do have sufficient money for this current fiscal year?
Yeah, I see Nicole's hands raised, so I'll defer to her.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Nicole.
At this point, it's going to be a waiting game. My suggestion, and this comes from others as well, is that Snow and ice is the only budget that we can deficit spend by law. So I know that the fire chief has already started some reimbursements with FEMA and MEMA because it was a state of emergency. So my suggestion, and we'll take a look at exactly what was spending. I know we're still waiting for some fuel costs. We do have the option to raise it on the recap in the fall when we set the tax rate. Anything over and above their $150,000. But at this point, it's a waiting game because we do not know the final number to put it on town meeting warrant.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh, go ahead.
Yeah, going back to the elevator, yes, sure, it needs to be fixed. I just wonder, is there any claim against the manufacturer or someone of it was a manufacturing defect or something along those lines? The case
We did
sounds
shake.
well
Yeah,
and
we did
well
shake down with
maintained, so
insurance.
forth.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Sorry.
something wrong originally.
I apologize for interrupting. I do just want to make a note that, this was something that was brought to me a couple months ago at this point. And, Chief Baldwin worked diligently to see if we could file a claim. But unfortunately that claim was denied. And I would also make a note that the deductible on that would have been $10,000. So it, unfortunately at the end of the day, we thought, because I think that was even brought up at a prior meeting with the finance committee.
Yeah.
But unfortunately that didn't pan out.
Yeah, I was 17 years old, but you think an elevator would have a longer life expectancy. But anyway, you've answered nicely, and I do agree it needs to be done.
Go ahead, Al. Thank you.
No, Chris answered the question, actually. I know that Chief Baldwin has gone through the warranty, he's gone through the insurance company, he's gone through all of this. And I have to say, Huey, that unlike the past, this equipment just doesn't last the way that it used to. There's still one compressor at Lee's Market that is operating since 1977. The rest of them have been trashed over time, and it's because of inferior equipment, whatever the heck it might be. And so I'm just simply saying that these things have a very short life, and it, as the kids would say, it is what it is. We don't have we don't have an elevator. It's got to be fixed, and on and on. So.
To sum it up, Al, they don't make them the way they used to.
No, well, look at you and me, for Christ's sakes.
Pretty well.
All right. So, does anyone want to make a motion on this?
So moved.
Motion to approve. Second.
Second, yep,
Great.
second.
Any further discussion?
No.
No. Okay. So I will go for a roll call. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Ally's eye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Nancy.
Nancy Stanton Cross, aye.
Thank you. And Duncan.
Duncan Law, aye.
And Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. All right. So the next item is the minutes, and I actually have all 5 sets of minutes that I put in the Google Drive. So if everyone has had a chance to read, I would love a motion to approve some minutes.
So moved.
Karen, if they were good enough for you, they're good enough for
Yeah,
me.
that's right.
So moved.
So moved, yeah, second.
Well, thank you. So
Please.
this is going to be motion for the January 20th, 26 minutes, January 27th, 2026 minutes, February 3rd, 2026, February 19th, 2026, and February 24th, 2026.
Yep, whatever you said. So moved.
Yep. Yeah.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. All right. So if no discussion, I will do a roll call. We can do all of them at once. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Ally's eye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Nancy?
Nancy Stanton Cross Eye.
Thank you. Duncan?
Duncan Law, aye.
Karen Rose, aye. Oh, that's a big monkey off my back. Wow.
Cindy, when you said if it was good enough for her, it reminded me of my grandmother Lee's wanted to be buried in a pine box because she said if it was good enough for Eisenhower, it was good enough for her.
I'll have to remember that one out.
Oh, man.
Karen, I have kind of a quirky thing that could come up when we vote on the articles of the warrant. I hope that we have a full committee because as Al so rightly indicated that he would abstain from voting on the CPC article, as Mr. Morton also indicated he would abstain because he's a member of CPC, the representative of CPC. I too am a member of the Historical Society. So, and we are beneficiaries of that article. So there would be 3 members of us that would prefer to abstain from voting in that article. So hopefully you'll get your votes, and it could be so noted that 3 members needed to abstain. Hopefully you will have a quorum to be able to vote the rest of that article. I know,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter whether we approve or
Right.
not approve. I mean, it's not going to matter to the
Right.
approval of that, I mean, or the passage of that one way or the other, but just so you know, for optics, that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, we're, March 24th is our published date. That is our last date, and then we need to send things to the select board so they can wrap things up. So I'm hoping for attendance. Everybody knows the date, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully everybody will be there. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up. So next week is March 17th, where this was reserved to continue discussion with any warrant articles, finalize our fiscal 27 budget. Sounds like hopefully other members that were not here will attend if there's any last minute questions or if there's any other potential changes of discussion to the budget. We should be able to finalize that next week. And then again, March 24th is really a meeting to action to make recommendations on all of the warrant articles. So not necessarily needing to discuss of significance. We can certainly time to deliberate, but we'll go through each of the articles and make recommendations and then call it a day. All right, so I have nothing else on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you for seconding that. I was wondering why someone wasn't seconding. All right,
We're having so much fun.
All right, so motion to adjourn. So Hugh,
You're more than I.
Al,
Al Lee's eye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Nancy,
Nancy Stanton Cross Eye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
and Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you, everyone. This was a tremendously helpful meeting tonight. Thank you.